Smokey, this is not Nam. This is bowling. There are rules.
Today, Junior! America!
Steak.
For breakfast!
So stand by.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Steak for Breakfast podcast. I'm Roan. I'll be your host for the next couple hours. If you're a first-time listener, welcome to the show. If you're a long-time listener, welcome back to America's fastest-growing and quickly becoming favorite political podcast on a busy News Tuesday. Guys, if you are hearing this episode for the first time, don't worry. We'll see you in just a bit. Press pause. Go check out our first edition of Steak for Breakfast today. That's episode 592. We hosted Tennessee Congresswoman Diana Harshbarger, also caught up with Texas Congressman for the first time, Michael McLeod. We talked about the growing and developing scandal regarding Joe Biden's health during the time that he was president, and how President Trump hosted the board of the Kennedy Center at the White House last night, gave some open remarks in his attempt to make the fine arts and American culture great again. Make sure you subscribe to the show. We're available across every downloadable podcasting platform. We prefer Apple or Spotify. And check us out on social media. We're available on all the platforms there as well, but are most active on X. So jumping into this right here, we're going to start talking about the latest on the status of President Trump's big, beautiful bill, which made it through 11 out of 11 committees, budget being the last. It cleared last night, and now heads for rules. And we're going to see what happens. Needs to get out of there for a floor vote, which is tentatively scheduled for sometime Wednesday or Thursday of this week. And after that, as long as we don't get dissenters on the floor once it comes to the full vote, remember, we're having some issues with a lot of the SALT delegation, including the congressmen from New York, several of them, LaLota, Lawler, etc. And then some of the dissenters who don't think fiscally this is as hawkish as it needs to be, starting in the Rules Committee with Norman and Chip Roy. Hopefully that doesn't spill onto the floor, because we already know there's two solid no's there waiting. And that's going to be Indiana Congresswoman Victoria Spartz, more than likely. And, of course, Kentucky Congressman, grandstander in chief, Tom Massie. So we'll see what happens. There's a lot of work to be done still. Speaker Johnson was talking about it on Fox News Sunday this weekend. And before we get into all of the current events, which is what is transpiring up on Capitol Hill today, that's meeting of leadership, lots of whipping, and, of course, an in-person visit on the Hill by none other than President Donald J. Trump. Let's hear the House Speaker and where he sat, what his view looked like to get the week started.
This is the vehicle through which we will deliver on the mandate that the American people gave us in the last election. You're going to have historic savings for the American people, historic tax relief for American workers, historic investments in border security, at the same time that we're restoring American energy dominance, and we're rebuilding the defense industrial base, and we're ensuring that programs like Medicaid and SNAP are strengthened for the U.S. citizens who need and deserve them, and not being squandered away by illegal aliens and persons who are ineligible to receive them and are cheating the system. And look, the tax cuts, is critical. We're going to make the 2017 tax cuts permanent. We're going to eliminate taxes on overtime and tips, as the president promised. New tax relief for seniors on Social Security. And we're going to cut taxes on job creators. So that will help everybody across the country, at the same time as incentivizing American-made production and manufacturing. This is a big thing. We cannot fail, and we'll get it done for the American.
Cannot fail. Have to get it done. There's no excuses. And for a lot of the stuff that I see coming off the Hill today, I think a lot of it is grandstanding, showing just what the congresspeople who represent their districts are all about and how they're going to fight to the bitter end on it for said constituents, while I think eventually voting with the majority and what I would like to call the greater good. Some of the economic impacts of President Trump's big, beautiful bill: a 9.9 to 14.9% higher investment rate, a 4.5 to 5.5% higher GDP, and 6.6 to 7.4 million full-time equivalent jobs being created over the course of President Trump's current 4 years. We would also see 4.2 million more full-time jobs or full-time job equivalents created, $5,900 to $11,000 in higher wages per worker, $7,600 to $12,600 higher take-home pay for a typical family with 2 children, $100+ billion of investment into American infrastructure, and 1+ million jobs and hundreds of thousands of new homes built to support the workforce growth in distressed areas and communities across the country. So there are massive incentives tied into this. And coming out of budget, President Trump had this to say on Truth Social, short and sweet: "Congratulations, Republicans. Make America great again." But there's also a lot of speculation that, and it was some of the things that President Trump had to deal with today, that, some of the people for the SALT delegations, some of the fiscal hawks like Ralph Norman and Chip Roy, some of the grandstanders like Tom Massey, and some of the Republicans who are inching towards independency, like Victoria Spartz, all set up potential roadblocks to derail this bill in its initial vote. So I saw yesterday, and following with Speaker Johnson's media hits on Sunday, Caroline Leavitt talked in extent during the White House press. I saw Caroline Leavitt talked in extent about a lot of the things involving the big, beautiful bill during the White House presser yesterday. However, here is some of the pro-family components of that, which she outlined or even highlighted during the White House presser as well. Let's check it out.
The provisions in the One Big Beautiful Bill, as I said, this is a very pro-family piece of legislation. Not only does it increase the child tax credit, but it also includes MAGA baby savings accounts for children that are born before January 1st, 2024, under 8 years old, U.S. citizens, and have at least one parent with a valid Social Security number. And when this tax provision becomes law, the child, if the parents seek to do this, will be set up with a savings account. Essentially, it's a 401k for a newborn baby. And child's relatives, their parents, can contribute up to $5,000 per year of after-tax dollars annually to that account. And then later in the baby's life, at age 25, savings account holders can withdraw up to the full balance of the account. Upon reaching 30, the account holders can access the full balance of the account for any purpose desired. So it's a great initiative for new parents, new mothers who want to set up this savings account for their children.
Pretty awesome. President Trump has made a huge reinvestment in making the nuclear family not just normalized, but great again. Today was Bring Your Son and or Daughters to Work Day at the White House. And in addition to having scores of little MAGA children running around the West Wing, the press was kicked out and children filled the seats today during the White House presser. And Caroline Leavitt fielded and answered questions for children who had questions specifically pertaining to President Trump. I thought it was absolutely amazing. They were talking about Diet Cokes. They were talking about what his favorite food was. Spoiler alert, might not be for breakfast, but it's definitely steak. Talked about the candies, which he most certainly enjoyed the most, like Pink Starbursts and Tootsie Rolls. Talked about his affection for ice cream sundaes with hot fudge and sorted treats on top. And just all the things that, every once in a while you got to take a breath and put all the realness of the world aside and just sit back, relax, and enjoy the wonders of how the children of this country make it so great. So it was really cool to see that today. Again, she was talking about a lot of the child-directed incentives in passing the big, beautiful bill yesterday during the White House presser. Steve Scalise was talking about some of the biggies that go into the GOP tax bill, and was on CNBC Squawk Box yesterday, chatting it up. Let's hear him.
And, last night, Budget Committee was another big step getting the bill through. And we were having conversations, Speaker Johnson and myself, with some of the members that still have some questions that were on the Budget Committee. We had that conversation yesterday for a long time, but then we got the bill through. And now we've still this week got a number of other meetings we're going to have with different ends of our conference, everybody from the the moderates to the ultra conservatives, and everybody in between, because there's so many important parts of this bill. You think about it, it's tax policy, making sure nobody gets a tax increase, border policy, giving President Trump the tools he needs to secure the border, energy policy, making sure that we can produce more energy in America, food stamps, looking at the debt ceiling so that we can address and not have a debt crisis, dealing with mandatory spending. As you point out, this bond downgrade is another serious blow that shows that America needs to get its fiscal house in order. We start to do that in this bill. I wish that there was just one Democrat in the House or Senate that would join us in trying to get responsible about addressing these problems, but they're not right now. They're a party in disarray, but we're still unified. We have some issues and questions we're working through, no doubt, but every step of the way, you go back and look at the two-step reconciliation process, the budget, then this reconciliation bill. Every vote's been tight. The margins are tight, but we're getting it done, and we're going to get it done this week in the House.
And just remember, whenever the Democrats and the media and that whole, side of the political verse really starts to ramp up the rhetoric, especially recently, against Republicans, especially those in Congress, it's right before they pull another victory out of the jaws of defeat. And it's quite honestly the truth. You really have to take into consideration how many times House Republicans have been finished, how many times Speaker Johnson has been cooked, since this session of Congress started, and they really, got to work on this reconciliation package. And here they are, down the home stretch, a rules committee away from getting this done and sent to a floor vote so they can get it up to the Senate. And it's usually when the doubters become the loudest that Speaker Johnson has found a way to snatch a victory for not just himself and his legacy, but President Trump and the American people moving forward. So everybody needs to take that into consideration. I know so many people are hypercritical of them. I saw one, kind of doomer, kind of a stale narrative show, really just smashing Speaker Johnson this morning. I saw the clip of it. It was more of like a unhinged, deranged rant by the host, more than anything, shared by some people online, and you see the comments underneath it. They're like, yeah, F that guy. What the hell's wrong with him? This, that, and the other thing. And I was like, hey, guys, you do realize that this host historically just verbally beats up on people who won't go on his show. And, that's kind of been his MO. And Speaker Johnson, for obvious reasons, has refused to appear on the larger apparatus, if you know what I mean. And, in turn, he hosts people like Chip Roy. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Tom Massey on there, or Rand Paul as well. And it's just kind of a joke to how people like to take political commentary and weaponize it, even against their own listenership, just blanketing them with misinformation. And because people were in the same context being like, yeah, but President Trump was saying he was doing a good job just this morning. Like, I don't understand it. And I was like, well, that's exactly my point. So, listen, light a candle for House Republicans and say a prayer for them because they need it. But let's hope that this gets done because it obviously serves not just conservatives in the America First movement, but all Americans from coast to coast. So as I had mentioned, President Trump was up on Capitol Hill this morning, and he had a couple things to say. The first was talking about what's going to happen if the Trump tax cuts expire and we don't get this bill signed into law. He's looking to give Americans the biggest tax cut in the history of our country. Again, the narratives that are out there is that this is a reconciliation package that empowers and rewards billionaires and punishes regular people. Again, there's like 800 billionaires who reside permanently in America. There are over 360 some odd million people who live here. I don't think that there's anything inside of a reconciliation package, especially this big, beautiful bill, that would ever get to pass Congress for all of these House members, for all of the districts that they have, for all of the constituents they represent, and think that the average, hardworking, blue-collar, middle-class, mom-and-pop families across the country aren't going to reap the rewards of this just as much as everybody else. That's the problem. This bill gives benefits to everyone, which includes the billionaires, because President Trump is more for an all Americans rather than some or only certain portions of Americans. And that's, part of the Democrat narrative. Democrats literally want to pass legislation that punishes or doesn't reward conservatives and only, gives anything to the most radical progressive Marxist wings of their own party. And as we're getting back to a president who doesn't care about who you voted for, but only that he wants you to have benefits, it's a little bit of a changing of the methodology used to make this country great again. And it's going to be interesting to see how receptive Democrats will be to some of the things they'll be having unleashed on them positively if the reconciliation package passes. Here's President Trump talking about the taxes portions of it and what he had to say this morning on the Hill.
Let's go ahead, Mr. President.
Are Republicans still grandstanding in your view?
Oh, yeah, sure. You have a couple that will grandstand, but I think even the grandstanders should. Look, the alternative is a 68% tax increase. And you can blame the Democrats for that and one or two grandstanders. We only have one or two, but we have tremendous support. But you'll have a 68% tax increase, or you'll get a massive tax decrease. You'll get a tax cut, the likes of which we've never had before. This is bigger than any Ronald Reagan tax cut. It's even bigger than the tax cut that I gave, because as you know, that's being extended and increased. So this is the biggest tax cut in the history of our country, or you'll get a 68% tax increase. And if that happens, what Republican could vote for that to happen? Because they wouldn't be a Republican much longer. They would be knocked out so fast. But we're going up to details. This is it'll
be a big win for the American people, and that's the fact of the matter. He would go into how, what about outside of the grandstanders, some of the fiscal hawks, like the Ralph Normans or Chip Roys, who sit on rules, say their no's right now, and the reason their no's is because there's not enough cuts of fraud, waste, and abuse, or things that Doge has identified that they want to make permanent now into it. Maybe the congressmen missing the point on getting this through with the opportunity to maybe do a smaller or skinny reconciliation package down the road, or making some of these cuts permanent in the upcoming 2026 fiscal year budget, which still needs to go through appropriations as well. Here's how POTUS kind of weighed in on it.
What are you planning to tell the fiscal hawks who want to delay this? What are you planning to tell the fiscal hawks who want to delay this?
I'm a fiscal hawk.
They don't think this cuts enough spending.
I'm a bigger fiscal hawk. There's nobody like me as a fiscal hawk.
Massey said that is more deficit than Biden did, and this bill kind of...
Because we have to fix the country.
Do you think that Thomas Massey is correct in saying that this is adding Biden level?
No, I don't think Thomas Massey understands government. I think he's a grandstander, frankly. He'll probably vote. We don't even talk to him much. I think he should be voted out of office. And I just don't think he understands government. If you ask him a couple of questions, he never gives you an answer. He just says, I'm a no. He thinks he's going to get publicity. And you have that. They've got some too. Go ahead.
Tom Massey has Pied Piper many a House Republicans along the way and over the years. But here's the deal. I really think that his time up in Congress is short. I think he might be even an upcoming election away from getting primaried out. And for as many people who used to love what he had to say or listen to what he had to say or identified with what he had to say, much in the same way of Rand Paul, something going on in Kentucky, man. It's the senator and the congressman. You also got Mitch McConnell from Kentucky as well. That's like a big three of
scissor me timber
up there in the halls of Congress. But here's the deal. Tom Massey is just now the guy who yells wolf or yells fire in the back of the room now, and everybody just kind of, shrugs it off and says like, hey, dude, we listen. This isn't the best. We didn't say it was the best, most fiscally tuned in or, 100% what everybody wants bill. It's a big, beautiful bill, and that's it. And President Trump's always going to take the opportunity to hammer Tom Massey, as the guy is literally a complete asshat as well. President Trump also talked about, let's see. Oh, there's a good one here. Who was in charge of the auto pen? And there was a Truth Social post which just came out in the last hour today on this as well. Let's hear President Trump, and then I'll read the follow-up.
Look, it's a very sad thing what happened, but I believe we're going to start looking into this whole thing with who signed this legislation. Who signed legislation opening our border? I don't think he knew. I said there's nobody that would want an open border. Nobody. And now I find out that it wasn't him. He auto-penned it. Who was operating the auto-pen? This is a very serious thing. We had a president that didn't sign anything. He auto-penned almost everything. He opened the borders of the United States of America. And I kept saying, who would do such a thing? Allowing criminals to pour in from all over the world, not just South America, all over the world. They came in from Africa, they came in from Asia, they came from the Congo. The prisons in the Congo in Africa, these are rough people. The prisons from the Congo are empty. You know where they are? They're in this country. Who would sign this? Nobody would sign it. No sane person would sign it. You know who signed it? Radical left lunatics that were running our country. And the AutoPen signed it. And they didn't want him, and they were disappointed in getting him because they wanted Bernie Sanders. And then after about 2 weeks, they said, wait a minute, this is a gift. He'll do anything. We're going to use the AutoPen. And they used the AutoPen and everything. He didn't approve this.
So that was President Trump weighing in on the AutoPen this morning up on Capitol Hill, but he also had a follow-up post on Truth Social, which has caught fire this afternoon, talking in the same thread and getting into the nitty-gritty of it. I'm going to read it right now. Joe Biden was not for open borders. He never talked about open borders where criminals of all kinds, shapes, and sizes can flow into the country at will. It wasn't his idea to open the border and almost destroy our country and cost us hundreds of billions of dollars to get criminals out of here and go through the process we are going through now. It was the people that knew he was cognitively impaired and that he took over the AutoPen. They stole the presidency of the United States and put us in great danger. This is treason at the highest level. They did it to destroy our country. The Joe Biden that everybody knew would never allow drug dealers, gang members, and mentally insane to come into our country and totally be here unchecked and unvetted. All anyone has to do is look up his record. He's referring to Joe Biden saying the N-word during Clarence Thomas's confirmation hearing. All anyone has to do is look up his record. Something very severe should happen to these treasonous thugs that wanted to destroy our country but couldn't because I came along to make America great again. So now we're talking treason. And the people who were Joe Biden's handlers, whether it was Jill and Hunter or the staffers, listen, this is an insulation package like we have been never seen before. Anyone knows that nothing stays a secret in Washington, D.C. And for the amount of declining health that Joe Biden had incurred, both during his time in the race since 2019 to 2020 and during his 4 years in office, there is no way that through all the medical checks and presidential physicals that he had to endure, is there any way that they didn't know that this was going on, the advanced cancer that he had. And it's a scandal to say the very least. And it seems like President Trump's patience is wearing thin on getting to the bottom of it. I know one thing that President Trump is not losing patience with, and that's his friends within the Republican conference. The press tried to push him on, hey, listen, is it really appropriate for you to be here so close to this thing going to rules, to have to whip your own party to get in there and do the votes that are going to, according to you, benefit the American people? He's like, listen, no, we have ran on a message of unity since the last election cycle. It's what's gotten us to this point. I'm just coming here to hammer it home. In no way, shape, or form is he losing patience. Check this out.
No, I didn't tell. Who told you I said I'm losing?
That's what we heard inside the room.
But that's a lie. Wait a minute. Wait. Who's told you that?
We heard from people inside the room.
Oh, really? It's totally true. I never used the term. I didn't say losing. I didn't even talk about it. In fact, it's the opposite. I think we're going to get it done. I'm not losing patience. We're ahead of schedule. Anybody that told you that is a liar. Wait a minute. I never mentioned the word losing patience because I'm not losing patience. We're ahead of schedule.
That's why I asked you.
Well, but why don't you go back to your source and tell them they're liars if the source even exists?
You know, and then he asked the guy who he worked for, and the guy was like, I work for Notice. And Trump was like, who? Notice. I'm sorry, what? Notice. He's like, I never heard of you guys. Maybe you should go out and get a real job. It's silly. Much like the way the Democrats are coping and seething right now. Chuck Schumer had this to say from inside the halls of the Senate regarding President Trump's trip to the Capitol this morning and where Republicans currently stand on the big, beautiful bill.
years from now, because clean energy is the future. It's cheaper and better. It's going to hurt our country, our families, our children in so many ways. This ideological obsession that the hard right, led by the oil, gas, and coal industry, have against clean energy is going to be very harmful. It's going to be one of the worst. There are many. But one of the worst things that this administration is doing.
Shut your bitch ass up!
Literally, Chuck. Last clip I've got before we jump in with Florida Congressman Greg Steube for the first time in a minute is of Speaker Johnson holding a press conference today up on Capitol Hill with the leadership of the conference following President Trump's visit to talk to everybody on the Republican side. Let's hear it.
Back over $500 billion in funding for the radical Green New Deal policies from Biden's so-called Inflation Reduction Act. We call it the Inflation Act. We're ending Biden's war on American energy. We're banning Medicaid dollars from going to transgender surgeries for minors. We're canceling Biden's student loan repayment program. We're increasing university endowment tax for these big woke institutions. We're revoking tax exempt status for nonprofits that materially support terrorism. We're doubling the jail time for leaks of confidential taxpayer information. We're eliminating big businesses' ability to engage in woke PR campaigns to facilitate refundability for green energy projects. We're incentivizing federal workforce to be at-will employees, and we're repealing Biden's disastrous EV mandate.
Here's the thing. The EV mandate will turn into something that's upheld nationally if we don't get it out of there. In addition, permanently eliminating the Green New Scam is an absolute game changer for this country. You know, Chuck Schumer wants to talk about big oil, coal, and gas when President Trump is looking to weaponize for our country clean energy, nuclear energy, in addition to oil, coal, and gas. Everything working together, the most prudent and the most effective in the areas where it's needed, and not just reliant on solar panels and wind turbines and all of this other bullshit that doesn't work. So that's kind of the what the temperature is up on Capitol Hill. I've texted a couple of our close friends here on Steak for Breakfast, and here's the deal. I can honestly tell you today, which is Tuesday, after the bill is passed budget, ahead of it heading to rules early tomorrow morning, everyone is exhausted, but cautiously optimistic. So we'll have to see where it goes from here. But we're going to leave it at this as we're getting ready to jump in with Florida Congressman Greg Steube. Before we do, we're going to have another check-in with one of our partners. I think it's time we had a conversation about a good night's sleep. Pillow King of Minnesota, Mike Lindell, and the apparatus known as the MyPillow family has been cranking out savings down at MyPillow for over 20 years. And for the first time in 20 years, they've changed the long-standing MyPillow and now have the MyPillow version 2.0. You enter promo code STEAK at checkout, you're going to get buy one, get one free. In addition to that, they've got great savings on all things like MyPillow dog beds, the Air Lindell version 1 and 2, My Slippers, and Giza Dream Everything. If you're more of a morning person, they've launched My Coffee. It's available in the bean, the bag, and the pod. When you enter promo code STEAK here, you're going to get 25% off your order or 50% off when you make it a monthly subscription. MyPillow.com/steak for anything sleep related. If you want the coffee, MyStore.com/steak, or you can always talk to a qualified pillow representative. 1-800-658-8045. All right, joining us next on the show today, the Big Tuesday edition of the Steak for Breakfast podcast. He's the congressman who represents Florida's 17th congressional district, which means we're welcoming back Representative Greg Steube. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to jump right in. So, big, beautiful Bill had a big, beautiful shot in the arm this morning. President Trump was up on the Hill to talk to the Republican conference. Guys airing out their differences and hearing from the president, staying focused on what's important to the American people, and that's getting this bill passed. Coming out of the meeting, you know, we've heard some people go to the media and say they're still disconnected, still far on some of the issues. But I think when you look at how Congress works and, you know, you want your congressman or woman to fight to the very end until it's time to actually vote and get this thing done. I think we're seeing a little bit more of that. President Trump alludes to it sometimes as grandstanding. But at the end of the day, I do think we're going to be able to get this bill done around the deadline that Speaker Johnson and President Trump wanted. And just kind of want to get your angle, Congressman, your office's angle on how we are in the progress on the bill right now.
Well, it was great to have the president here and him pushing the members of the conference on the issues that have been sticking points. I mean, he came in with a speech, but he didn't even read the speech. He came in and he talked about SALT, and then he came in and he talked about Medicaid and said, look, these are the two biggest pieces. These are the biggest causes of concern and challenges within the party. And he straight up looked at the New York guys and said, look, I know why you're fighting for it, but we can't have SALT. There's no point in doing it, and kind of berated them for the fact that even if you get half of what you want, the Democrats are still going to attack you. And why should all of these other states, like great state of Florida, subsidize bad tax policies in New York, New Jersey, and California? So it was great to hear him say that we shouldn't be bailing out Democratic governors through the SALT deduction. So hopefully the SALT caucus guys will just agree to that and vote on the bill. I guess we'll see. Rules is meeting early tomorrow morning, late tonight, to vote out the big, beautiful bill. And then hopefully on Thursday, we will be voting on the bill as a whole. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But it was great to hear right straight from the president's mouth on two issues that have been sticklers for our conference.
It has been, and I understand the fact that there are Republican members of Congress who have won elections inside of blue states. But you said it right there. When you talk about the bad tax policies of Governors Gavin Newsom and Kathy Hochul and others, it shouldn't be the rest of the country that has to go in and bail them out every single time something budgetary comes across the pike. Now, the fact of the matter is that there was proposed increases to this. It looked like Speaker Johnson and the rest of leadership wanted to work with the SALT delegations, but I mean, going from $10,000 to $100,000 in a bill where we're supposed to be proving to the Americans where we're saving and making real cuts that are going to be long-lasting over a 10-year period, obviously, was not about the way to do this.
Well, if it stays the way it is currently in the bill that passed the Ways and Means Committee last week, it increases the SALT deduction from $10K to $30K. That's tripling the deduction. So I don't know if you're Lawler or Lolota or one of these guys from New York. I don't see how you can't go back to your district and say, I tripled your deduction, and that's not a winner. But based on what the president said today, he was more inclined to keep it where it is, which is what I support. I don't support increasing it at all because we're increasing at the cost of low cost and low tax states like Florida. So we'll see what the Rules Committee does late tonight, early tomorrow morning as it relates to changing that. But the bill that came out of Ways increased it to $30K. That was kind of the number that was kind of a compromise number. So we'll see if Rules brings it back down to 10 or keeps it at the 30. If they keep it at the 30, which I anticipate they will, I don't see how you can't communicate that as a win to your district.
Agreed.
And that's kind of a compromise number. I don't support it. I don't think we should increase it at all. But in order to get the overall bill and the tax policy and the tax cuts to the American people over the finish line, I was willing to support it.
Yeah, it does give them a little bit of bump heading into the midterm election cycle that, hey, our voices were heard, our needs were met, and we'll just call this 30% a starting block. It doesn't have to necessarily be the reality that we're living in, but I mean, that's the way they could kind of frame it to their voters. I do like the fact that, you aren't for it either, as we aren't here on the show, and as many of the members who come through Steak for Breakfast aren't as well. What are some of the potential challenges you could see? I mean, there are a lot of people who are saying we can get this bill voted on and done with by Thursday, heading into Rules right now, outside of maybe SALT. Do you think the stuff that's, looking to fine-tune healthcare, I mean, fraud, waste, and abuse is definitely something that has been addressed by House Republicans. They ran on it. They won on it. They've been working on it since the beginning of this session. Able-bodied Americans who shouldn't use it, people who are abusing, obviously, the system just for what it is, and the illegal alien component, especially in sanctuary states, that they're seeing illegals, benefit from the benefits of having things like Medicaid available and Medicare and things like that.
Well, the president was very clear on Medicaid. He said, we're going to go after fraud, waste, and abuse, but we're not going to cut Medicaid, we're not going to cut Medicare, and we're not going to cut Social Security. And that has to be the message as we go out united, that we're going to go after the fraud, waste, and abuse. Assume that, if able-bodied individuals should be able to go and get a job and have work requirements and do those sort of things, and that's not cutting Medicaid benefits to those that actually need it. So we're going after the fraud, waste, and abuse, and that's what the bill should be focused on. As it relates to how it comes out of Rules, you've got Chip Roy and Ralph Norman that are on the Rules Committee. So I think if both of them actually vote no in the committee, it'll pass the committee and it'll go to the floor. But if they vote no and then they vote no on the floor, if Massey and Spartz are down, then obviously the bill's not going to get there. And I've seen the messaging since the conference this morning that both Lolota and Lawler are still a no because it doesn't raise the SALT high enough. But I'll tell you this, with the threat of Trump in their district, if they don't comply with passing this, This is what the president campaigned on. This is what the Republican majority has to deliver for the American people. And I could say that Republicans who are standing in the way of getting this done on something as controversial as a SALT deduction for Democratic states is probably going to have some challenges as we move forward into the next election cycle.
Is it true this morning during the conference huddle with President Trump, he brought up your congressional baseball stats?
Yeah, he usually when he sees me, he saw me in the back, and he's like, he always likes to bring up the home run.
Yep.
I'm hoping he'll be in the game this year. So anybody listening, June 11th, you can watch it on Fox Sports. I think first pitch is going to be around 7:00 on June 11th. You can watch the Republicans take on the Democrats and hopefully win for 5 straight years in a row.
Yeah, I don't think they got too many hot arms or big bats in the Democrat lineup this year. They might have some other things, but definitely not that. Listen, looking forward a little bit, Congressman, and it's hard with the big, beautiful bill right in front of us, but one of the other things that's running neck and neck with this as far as importance of agenda items in the Republican House is codifying President Trump's executive orders and turning them into law. We've seen how the process works now, where Democrats don't necessarily have to win elections. They don't have to have majorities in the House or Senate, the president, or anything like that. They could just weaponize the district judges to injunct the president at a national level, even though that really doesn't make sense and seems unconstitutional. Congress codifying these executive orders into law would bypass a lot of that process and make it a lot harder for them to be challenged as well. How have you guys kind of gotten together on those issues, and how fast of a process, once you think reconciliation is done, do Republicans need to hit the ground running on this one?
Well, some of it we already have, like my women's and sports bill that prevents biological men from competing in women's sports. But of course, that takes 60 votes in the Senate and didn't make it in the Senate because Democrats aren't going to vote for that. What we will do, and there are some of his EOs that are codified in the reconciliation package, but they have to be budgetary in nature in order for it to qualify for reconciliation. Otherwise, it'll get kicked out. So anything that has a budgetary nature to it that we can put in reconciliation, it is in there. But we're obviously going to have to get 60 votes in the Senate, anything that's not in reconciliation. So I think you'll see the House do that wherever we can. But people have to understand that you can pass stuff in the House like my women's and sports bill, but it's going to go to the Senate, and if Democrats don't support it, you need 60 votes and it's going to die. So we've got to get as much of it in the reconciliation package as we can, but know that it can't be in reconciliation unless it has a budgetary piece to the budget. Otherwise, it wouldn't qualify for being in the package.
Outside of the lawfare, one of the other things Democrats unfortunately always resort to is violence. We saw that a couple weeks ago at an ICE detention facility up in North Jersey. How surprised were you, or maybe even reassured, that U.S. Attorney Alina Habba finally pressed charges against the Democrat Congresswoman for some of her misbehaviors up there a few weeks ago? And what kind of a standard might that set moving forward? That, listen, we've all seen the methodology that Democrats use when they don't get their ways. Violence isn't going to be one of them anymore because we're getting back to being a nation of law and order again.
Yeah, I think it's great that we're going to actually uphold the law. And when, regardless of who you are, if you're a congressman, you break the law and you assault a law enforcement officer, then you're going to be held accountable. And I think that'll make a lot of these Democrats think twice before they try to physically force their way into a facility that they're not authorized to go in. They're not any different than any other American that breaks the laws, and they should be treated as such. So I commend the U.S. attorney for doing that. I commend Pam Bondi for taking a stand on that. And obviously, when you actually enforce the laws, that has a culminary effect on people that are seeing that. They're probably going to think twice before they break the law again.
Yeah, hopefully former disgraced FBI Director James Comey is listening, because I've heard that the DOJ is really considering weighing some kind of consequences against him as well. Listen, Congressman, on the heels of such a big trip that President Trump had last week, they're calling it historic, his visit to the Middle East. You saw some things outside of the box. There was no fist bumping. There was no Air Force Ones being left on the tarmac. There was a lot of celebration. There were leaders who usually like to display how strong of a leader they are by letting other world leaders come to them who couldn't seem to get to the tarmac fast enough to greet President Trump and the delegation from the Trump administration to get in there and work out some massive trade deals, over $2 trillion in commitments, millions of jobs for Americans that are going to be happening over the course of the next 4 to 10 years. When you see that reestablishment of American leadership in the world, and as all the leaders showed, maybe not even with their words, but with their actions, like a collective breath of fresh air and reassurance that strong leadership is back here in the States, it has to say a lot for the job that the president is doing. He's balancing a lot of things at the same time, but you can't say he did anything except win at the end of this trip.
Yeah, again, now we have strength in the White House again, and world leaders across the world recognize that, and they recognize the leadership that President Trump brings to not just the nation but to the world. And so there's a lot of respect for that. And you saw that in all of those different locations that he went to. You saw these Saudi kings and leaders doing things they've never done before for any other world leader, because it's President Trump, and he's respected on the world stage. So he's able to get a lot of things done that otherwise we wouldn't be able to get done. I mean, look at all these historic things that have happened in just like 4 months that he's been in the White House.
Yep.
Not just the big, beautiful bill that we're working on, but trade agreements with the UK. You've seen hostages returned. You've seen peace and not things that they're trying to do peace deals in Israel and trying to do peace deals in Ukraine, that otherwise none of that would have happened but for President Trump. So it's great to see that other world leaders are recognizing that.
And then when you see some of our long-standing, maybe not geopolitical enemies, but foes or adversaries when it comes to a lot of different things, whether it's diplomacy, whether it's trade, whether it's counterterrorism and things of that nature, when President Trump proves that he has a short memory in regards to winning on the benefit for this country and putting the country first instead of maybe his ego or even his legacy, and offers a fresh restart to places like China, Pakistan, Syria, and Iran. You know, these countries have always thought that, like, President Trump was going to come in and be like, maybe this big hard ass is going to deal with him in the harshest way as possible. And like in the first administration, put them out on an island and make them get so close to internal collapse. It's like almost unsustainable, and probably reassuring to them that he didn't win consecutive elections. But now it looks like he's got like a bigger, broader, like world peace, just seasoned diplomacy that he's using right now. And you're seeing all of these countries who are usually hardliners on no that anything the United States saying, like, you know, maybe formalizing trade relations with big countries in the West and actually being a normal country is something that would be beneficial to us down the road.
Yeah, if they care about their people, which there's some argument, some of these leaders don't, but
sure,
if they care about the people, they're going to want some of these type of agreements to bring their countries into prosperity and out of poverty. And you do that through trade deals and trade negotiations with more powerful nations. So it's great that President Trump is focusing on that. And I think you're seeing world leaders that otherwise would have no likelihood at all to even think about that, looking at that to try to bring their people up through the economic affairs that they have.
Yeah, it's wild to see the way that this is shaking out in just 4 short months, as you alluded to at in the top of this interview. Listen, Congressman, we don't catch up with you enough, but when we do, it's always a treat. We really appreciate you taking some time to share with our listenership here on the show. We've got everything live linked in our show description today, including a link to your congressional website. They can sign up for the newsletter, see all the stuff you're doing in district and on the Hill. Where can we find you on social media? We'll live link that as well.
At Rep. Greg Steube.
Easy money, as it is every time. And when we catch up with the congressman who's representing Florida 17, out there fighting for all of America first, Representative Greg Steube, thanks for joining us on the show this week, sir. Have a great rest of your week, and hopefully we see you again soon.
Yeah, you too, anytime.
And we award the first ever Medals of Sacrifice to 3 heroic law enforcement officers from Palm Beach County, Florida. I went to the service. It was crazy. It was just horrible. Earlier today, Congressman Brian Mast, who's right here, introduced a bill to ensure this new medal will be awarded to any law enforcement officer or first responder who gives his or her life in the line of duty.
All right, jump back into the news portion of the show here. Last news segment on the back end of 2 big Tuesday editions of the Steak for Breakfast podcast. I'm Roan, and it was great catching up with Florida Congressman Greg Steube, whether we're talking about the big, beautiful bill, President Trump's historic trip to the Middle East, codifying executive orders, or some of his congressional baseball home runs. It's always a pleasure to host the Sunshine State's congressman from the 17th district down there. And that was President Trump yesterday, talking about the first ever Medal of Sacrifice ceremony, which took place in the West Wing in the Oval Office to be awarded to the families of law enforcement officials who make the ultimate sacrifice while on duty here in the United States. The first 3 were given out to a trio of, I believe, Palm Beach law enforcement officers in Brian Mast's congressional district. And it was just another wholesome component of what President Trump is trying to do to, make law enforcement great again in this country and make America understand how important it is to have law and order and to understand the job that these men and women have to do when they put on the uniform and secure the belt and tighten their bootstraps and head out into the streets every day, and how much more dangerous these streets have gotten over the course of the past several decades with, radical judges sitting on benches, letting criminals out of prison, the closures of so many prisons across the country, and obviously when you factor in the amount of criminal illegal aliens who are running coast to coast here in America as well. Speaking of criminals, I heard the Department of Justice is mulling over whether or not to bring any charges against former disgraced, fired FBI director James Comey. So we all know the story that broke, last week, where James Comey said he was out walking on the beach with his wife when he came upon a collection of pebbles which were formed into the number 8647, which would essentially mean get rid of President Trump. He posted it on his Instagram account. It was hit with a firestorm of criticism. It was taken down, and then not really an apologetic, but just like, well, I didn't know this was a political statement. I don't even know what it means. Fucking asshole. He most certainly does, and he's full of shit. And not only that, but he's the person that set it up. Again, I laid this out for you guys on our Friday edition of Steak for Breakfast. Here's the deal. James Comey has a book coming out next week. And he just wants himself back in the media. He knows by doing stupid shit like that, as the former FBI director and a federal attorney, that nothing's going to happen to him. He's just a piece of shit. Like, there's no two ways to frame it otherwise. He's just human garbage. And we see his TDS. And, to watch this retard go across the mediascape over the weekend and try to, number one, justify his actions, and number two, plead for his innocence. Well, here's a little snippet of what you guys got on MSDNC on Sunday. Check it out.
You are back in the middle of a political firestorm.
Yeah, for walking on the beach with my wife. So I don't know how we ended up here. It never occurred to me that it was any kind of controversial thing, but that's the time we live in.
So take me back to the walk on the beach.
We were walking on the beach. We went to the beach to prepare for this week, which was the launch of my book, and to think about the book and to prepare to answer questions about it. And we were walking back towards the road, and we saw in the sand someone had arranged shells with numbers. And Patrice, my wife, said, why would someone put an address in the sand? And I said, I don't know. And we stood over it, and I said, I think it's some kind of like political message. And she said, 86, when I was a server, she did a lot of work in restaurants, meant to remove an item from the menu when you ran out of ingredients. And I said, well, to me, as a kid, it always meant to leave a place, to ditch a place. I said, that's really clever. So then she said, you should take a picture of that. And I did. And I posted it on my Instagram account and thought nothing more of it until I heard through her that people were saying it was some sort of a call for assassination, which is crazy. But I took it down. Even if I think it's crazy, I don't want to be associated with violence of any kind.
And then what happened?
I got a call from the Secret Service that night asking if I would speak to them about it. Of course. I admire the Secret Service. They're pros. I spoke to them on the phone. Then they asked the next day when I got home, would I be willing to come in and meet them in person at the Washington field office, which again I did, and they were pros again.
Between posting the picture and getting a call from the Secret Service, did you have any sort of gut check of like, well, they've audited me in an extraordinary way. I was under investigation for years after he fired me. Did you have any regret about posting the picture?
Well, I regret the distraction and the controversy around it. But again, it's hard to have regret about something that even in hindsight looks to me to be totally innocent for the reasons you said. But yeah, I didn't have a gut check. In the Trump era, I've been investigated a lot, audited a lot. And so it's not my first rodeo. I'm in some strange way the relationship he can't get over. Maybe because I've lived a happy, productive life since leaving. But this has just been a distraction in that life.
He's just a miserable shitbag. And you want to talk about equally miserable shitbags. He's getting interviewed by Nicole Wallace, former Republican there. And she's just another big fat whiny
vagina
as well. And I just cannot stand these people to the nth degree. You know how we feel about James Comey here on Steak for Breakfast and how he's made so many people close to President Trump, including the former and current president's lives.
He should fucking die.
Oh, it's a little harsh, but maybe not outside the realms of normalcy. If you want to put a little bit of a comedic spin on it, Senator John Kennedy weighed in on just exactly what he thought was going on with this situation. And, I mean, I could try to explain it, but no one tells it much like the Louisiana senator. Let's hear him.
One other topic of conversation today is, of course, that tweet from the former FBI director, James Comey, now deleted, showing the numbers 86-47 in the sand. Do you think that was an appropriate thing for James Comey to put on social media?
No. Look.
Who the frig is coughing in the
background? You can only be young once, but you can always be immature. I know Mr. Comey pretty well. He's been on a lot of Senate committees. He's very self-assured. As Lyndon Johnson used to say, he can strut sitting down. He's got a chip on his shoulder. In fact, the chip on his shoulder has a chip on its shoulder. He, as an FBI director, he interfered not just in one presidential campaign, he interfered in two. He tried to screw both Trump and Hillary Clinton. People have forgotten that what he tried to do to Secretary Clinton.
I covered that.
Yeah, I mean, he a good argument can be made he cost her the election. You know, I don't have a lot of sympathy for him. I'm not saying, I don't know what his intent was, but it was bone deep down to the marrow stupid.
He is a national treasure. And listen, he had mentioned Hillary Clinton. Next clip I've got, they've wheeled her out of wherever they keep her from becoming a mainstay in the traditional media to go and, you'd never guess it, attack conservative women. Check this out.
As I posted the other day, this very blatant effort to basically send a message, most exemplified by Vance and Musk and others, that, you know, what we really need from you women are more children. And what that really means is you should go back to doing what you were born to do, which is to produce more children. And they are talking about, you know, cash benefits for the more children you have. This has been tried, by the way, in other countries, and it has not worked. Or medals if you have 6 children, while they're contemplating cutting Medicaid, while they have no interest in paid family leave or funding quality child care. They're cutting Head Start. I mean, you go down the list of all the programs that support child rearing and the care of children and create, you know, some safety net for women who are in the workforce, the formal workforce, as well as, you know, raising children. So this is another performance about concerns they allegedly have for family life. But if you had read the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, despite Trump saying he knew nothing about it, if you had read it, it's all in there. It's all in there. Return to the family, the nuclear family, return to being a Christian nation, return to, you know, producing a lot of children, which is sort of odd because the people who produce the most children in our country are immigrants, and they want to deport them. So none of this adds up. But, you know, one of the reasons why our economy did so much better than comparable advanced economies across the world is because we actually had a replenishment, because we had a lot of immigrants, legally and undocumented, who had a, you know, larger than normal, by American standards, family. So this is just another one of their, you know, make America great again by returning to the lifestyles and the economic arrangements of not just the 1950s. I mean, let's keep going back as far as we can and, you know, see what happens.
She is a fucking disaster, to say the very least. I mean, you hear her literally demonizing the nuclear family and Christian values. And I mean, we all know what it is with Hillary Clinton and that whole band of merry losers. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's just a little case of
hate is because they ain't us. Exactly. They hate us because they ain't us. That's a great...
I mean, what else is it? Getting back to good, wholesome, family-centered, God-centered values again is bad. And it's only good when it's illegal immigrant families that are doing it. Fuck that. Fuck her. It's wild, but it's what the Democrat Party has devolved down into. And I don't see them being able to recover from this. Guys, wherever you're listening to the show today, hope you're enjoying the second of two big Tuesday editions of the Steak for Breakfast podcast. Do us a favor. Share the show with everyone you know. Head over to your favorite podcasting platform, whether it's Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Samsung, Amazon Podcast, or wherever you're hearing the show. Subscribe for free. Make sure we're downloading to your electronic device. Rate the show 5 stars. And please write a review. In addition, you can check us out on social media. Twitter, Getter, True Social, Instagram, and TikTok is where we have accounts. Find them, follow them, hit the notification bell. You'll never miss out on all the great stuff we've got going on down here at Steak for Breakfast, including our 2 new YouTube channels additionally. So one of the things that Democrats just can't let go of, and one of the biggest portions of the art of the weave, is this whole plane deal that President Trump is getting gifted. And, you know, it comes up during the White House presser every time they get President Trump or somebody in senior leadership or a department official. And they just kind of want to bait them into talking about how is this plane that's being gifted to President Trump legitimate? How is it not corruption? How is it not bribery? Well, it's not. They're not giving it to President Trump personally. They're giving it to the United States State Department to be refitted and refurbished and used in lieu of the new Air Force One, which is, you know, about a year behind schedule from being produced. So when this came up in the White House presser yesterday, this is what Caroline Leavitt had to say in response. Let's check it out.
I'm glad you brought up this question because I was watching the American press spew a lot of misinformation about the plane donation last week when we were abroad. Let's be very clear. The government of Qatar, the Qatari family, has offered to donate this plane to the United States Air Force, where that donation will be accepted according to all legal and ethical obligations. It will be retrofitted to the highest of standards by the Department of Defense and the United States Air Force. This plane is not a personal donation or a gift to the President of the United States. And everyone who wrote that last week should go and correct their stories because this is a donation to our country and to the United States Air Force. As for a timeline, because it is the United States Air Force that is accepting the plane, I would defer you to them for specifics because the President, frankly, has nothing to do with it. It's the Air Force's project to take on.
And, you know, these people are just deranged. It's going to be whatever fake news narrative they get away with for as long as they can get away with it. And when you look at the dollars and cents on this, it just shows that they are so sad and so distraught and so disconnected from reality after the curb stomping they received in the last election cycle and how they haven't been able to recover since. Well, here's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent reiterating the same points on fake news CNN's Crying Jake Tapper show yesterday. Check this out.
They're a hard-nosed businessman. Even if Qatar isn't asking for anything in return now for the jet, I mean, that's a bill that could come due. Nobody in the Middle East gives things just to, or anywhere in the world, just gives a $400 million jet just to be nice.
Well, I don't know, Jake. The French gave us the Statue of Liberty. The British gave us the Resolute Nest. I'm not sure they asked for anything in advance. And the more important airplane deal was there's $100 billion of orders from Qatari Airlines to Boeing. Kelly Ortberg, the CEO of Boeing, was with us in the Middle East. This is the biggest order in the company's history. So, I think that plane deal is much more important than this other one.
Well, I will just say about the Statue of Liberty, I mean, that was authorized by Congress, and it belongs to the American people. It doesn't belong to whoever was president at the time.
Well, I think that this plane would be a gift to the American government.
Makes sense, right? Because that's exactly what it is. It's a gift to the American government. And, I think it's pretty cool that the nation of Qatar stepped up based off the incentives of work that they want to do with the United States moving forward. Now, getting into some serious business and sticking in the same thread of this interview, Tapper and Bessent would talk about some of the trade deals that are coming down the pike for the Trump administration. And believe me, there are a lot of big, beautiful ones from what I'm hearing. out of D.C. Let's listen to the Treasury Secretary.
We didn't get here overnight in terms of this terrible trade situation we have with China, but also with the rest of the world. And President Trump is renegotiating these, and strategic uncertainty is a negotiating tactic. So if we were to give too much certainty to the other countries, then they would play us in the negotiations. I am confident that at the ends of these negotiations, both the retailers, the American people, and the American workers will be better off. That what we saw with China was the only country post April 2nd to escalate. So both sides escalated. We got to an untenable level. We were at 145%. They were at 125%. And we had a meeting in Geneva last weekend, and both sides came down 115%. So the U.S. is now at 30%. A 10% reciprocal tariff that's on a pause, and 20% fentanyl tariffs. Those were put on back in February, so those are already in the system. So I think most of the small businesses you're talking to, they were probably referring to the very high triple-digit tariff levels, which have now been brought down.
They have been brought down, and it's going to be beneficial for not just our trade partners moving forward, but the United States as well. You know, you can't say enough about, I don't want to call it the fallout, but from the ripple effect of this trip and how important it was for the United States to have President Trump to get back into the Middle East and secure some of these massive trade deals for our country and our economy and our workforce and our infrastructure, and how over the course of the next 4 years and hopefully many, many years beyond will you start seeing, some of the benefits that President Trump is planting the seeds for now. It wasn't just the relationships that were being smoothed over, the ones that were destroyed under Joe Biden. It was the actual pens to paper that were getting done, which I think are going to prove to be the biggest beneficiary item in all of this. President Trump has taken on a new diplomatic kind of A-game here with deal-making over dogma. We used to be hypercritical of especially dealing with Arab nations where they have such restrictions on everything, from women to sexual preference to religious freedoms and free speech, etc. There would be incentives to westernize other countries just to do deals with the United States. We are no longer doing that anymore. We are respecting who the countries are. Again, whether it's normalish ones like UAE and Qatar and Saudi Arabia, or not so normalish ones like Pakistan, where they have, up to 15 or 16 different terrorist organizations operating freely with inside of the country, or Syria, who just, had a political coup there and is supposedly, according to Secretary of State Rubio, weeks away from civil war. We're incentivizing getting into deals with the United States to bring these countries into the global fold and show that if you want to act normal, instead of promote terrorism and cause war, well, then you can reap the benefits financially on the global markets. And that's where President Trump is kind of, shining where others have failed. Saudi Arabia inked a $600 billion deal with $142 billion military procurement. Qatar inked a $243 billion package with a $96 billion Boeing order. The United Arab Emirates, $14.5 billion aircraft order, and the construction of an AI data center here in the United States. But it's not just about dollars. And it's like I led in with, these trade deals come on the heels of a massive reversal in U.S. foreign policy. And that is essentially setting up to be a big part of the Trump doctrine, because it unlocks previously impossible partnerships based off of, where the governments are at or who they're governed by. And, one of the clear-cut examples, like I just mentioned, was Syria. President Trump lifted all sanctions on them because of the commercial opportunity and regional stability that could be benefited from getting into trade deals by the United States. Business leaders who are now part of the senior envoys ahead of these meetings and business securings, like Witkoff, like Bessent, like Lutnick. They're game changers. They've done these multi-billion-dollar corporate international deals for a very long time, and, you know, sticking within the threads of U.S. policy and how that's changing, this should be a walk in the park for a lot of them. The commercial background, especially, it gives them a unique edge in regards to securing the best deals for the United States, because these guys that he's brought in to make this team, they're deal makers, they're negotiators, and they're risk takers first. That's what President Trump is. What looks best is when everyone, Musk, Bessent, Witkoff, Lutnick, these people go in there and have that risk-taking ability to make it seem like everybody is on the same page, because for once in a long time they are. You're not dealing with cookie-cutter politicians or career diplomats who, you know, want to stay in the bounds of everything instead of roll the dice a little bit and see if America could win for once. The engaging adversaries or problematic partners is another huge one as well. I had mentioned Pakistan, obviously dangling carrots to Iran, Russia, China, game changers. Imagine them abandoning the world's largest concerns about this country, Pakistan, terrorism, China, trade manipulation, and all that bullshit, Russia, the war in Ukraine, Iran, their nuclear ambitions, to come into the global community fold and understand that having a magnificent economy is a lot better than wanting to constantly wage war, whether it be with dollars or paper or car bombs or nukes. You know what I'm saying? And albeit controversial, the only reason you're seeing the biggest coping and seething from the Democrats, from the media, is that because a lot of people have talked about this for decades, but no one's had the balls to do it. And not only is President Trump doing it now, he's getting it done. And it's amazing to see how the president has worked so far. So again, this will continue to, maybe in some instances, overlook security for commercial gain, prioritize short-term deals over stability, stop alienating traditional allies by empowering a little bit problematic regimes historically. But the advantages that the United States has by doing this allows for driving job creation, economic growth, working with more partners, and freeform ideology, quickly adapting to global changes and enriching leverage in regions dominated by their rivals, which is another key component to the coping and seething as well. This whole commercial diplomacy aspect that Trump and his team have brought to the table calls for prosperity over ideology, deals over dogma, and it prioritizes tangible results over principles that the United States just has to start picking up some W's on. Will all these deals be executed? I have no idea. But at the end of the day, this is something that is promoting the long-term growth and security of America, and I think it needs to be pushed. And the eventual answers are going to not only reshape global politics for decades, if not forever to come. Imagine that. The man who literally rewrote the political playbook here in the United States is going to do the same thing on global trade and other things. Ending wars, normalizing relationships, and things of that nature. It just seems like the new look U.S. foreign policy is bigger and bolder and brighter than ever before. And you could guarantee one thing. All of the old rules, all of the old methodologies, and a lot of the old players, well, they're finally out of the game. Last clip I've got, and as our last audio clip of the day, I had mentioned it at the top of our first show. President Trump had a big, beautiful announcement from inside the Oval Office today. And that was the announcement for the Golden Dome. Let's hear it.
The campaign, I promised the American people that I would build a cutting-edge missile defense shield to protect our homeland from the threat of foreign missile attack. And that's what we're doing. Today I'm pleased to announce that we have officially selected an architecture for this state-of-the-art system that will deploy next-generation technologies across the land, sea, and space, including space-based sensors and interceptors. And Canada has called us, and they want to be a part of it. So we'll be talking to them. They want to have protection also. So as usual, we help Canada do the best we can. This design for the Golden Dome will integrate with our existing defense capabilities and should be fully operational before the end of my term. So we'll have it done in about 3 years. Once fully constructed, the Golden Dome will be capable of intercepting missiles even if they are launched from other sides of the world and even if they are launched from space.
So there you have it. Big, beautiful announcement from inside the Oval Office today, and heading into the rest of the week, we're going to have plenty to look forward to covering on our Friday editions of Steak for Breakfast. I'm going to turn it over to myself right now and perform a little bit of the outro. Stay tuned because we have a special announcement for a major guest that will be returning to the show on our Friday editions coming up just now. Thanks, Roan. Much like in the same sense that President Trump is changing the way diplomacy is done, we're changing the way you consume your news here on Steak for Breakfast. If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast and want to hear the now over 590 other editions of the show, well, you best be subscribed to us across every downloadable podcasting platform. We're on all of them, but we prefer you subscribe for free on Apple and Spotify. You can also check us out on social media. We're on all of them as well, but most active on X. And don't forget to check out our brand new YouTube channels as well. We'd like to thank all of our guests for coming in and sharing with us today. Tennessee Congresswoman Diana Harshberger, Texas Congressman Michael Cloud, and Florida Congressman Greg Steube. You guys all helped make Steak great again. Guys, going to be a busy week, but don't worry, we're here for it. Going to have at least one edition of the podcast drop on Friday. It's probably going to be two now because our guest lineup is already full. We've got an absolute murderer's row of content creators coming in here. You're going to absolutely love it. Indiana Congresswoman Aaron Houchin, New York Congressman Nick Langworthy, Texas Congressman Keith Self, and making his illustrious return since Donald Trump's been sworn in, the border czar, Tom Homan, will be here as well. So on behalf of the pod team, I'm Roan. Thanks for listening. Have a great rest of your week, and take care.
Were you embarrassed? No, it said Andy Harris said that you didn't adequately convince enough people to vote for the bill. The House Freedom Caucus.
You mean after this speech?
After this speech, that's what she said.
Well, what do we see at the voters? I think it was a great talk. It wasn't a speech we talked about. And who do you work for?
Notice.
Who?
Notice.
I don't even know what the hell that is.
Hold on, Andy.
Get yourself a real. Let me tell you. I think we have unbelievable unity. I think we're going to get everything we want. And I think we're going to have a great victory. And this man has done a great job. And I think this was a tremendous session.